In today's video, we're going to get tactical and talk about calculating ROI of your team. The best teams feel aligned, paid, and clear on how their role moves the business. So we're going to break down how to do that today. We're going to go through sales, do a model on how to calculate return on rep multiples and how you can automate this in your business, go through marketing, fulfillment, and everything we did wrong. We have overpaid, we have misaligned KPIs, we've done everything you can do wrong, and I'm going to share it all with you today. So if your team wins but your margin dies, you didn't build comp, you built a chaos machine. And we're going to get into that. So last year we did 30 million in cash collected in our info coaching business. We just crossed over 73 million in total cash collected. And I'm not selling you anything. Everything on the channel share what did work, didn't work, and what we're actively doing to scale to 100 million a year, all with the goal of finding top talent, opportunities, and networking with cool people building cool shit. All right. So let's get into it. Now, aligned, paid, and clear on how their role moves the business. This does not necessarily just mean monetary. I am numbers, I like numbers, but it would be foolish to say that it is just how much they get paid or how they are paid. That is why someone works in a business, why someone is a part of a team, okay? So, clear preface there. Core idea. You need to look at this as an investment, not an expense. When you do ROI, you're doing return on investment. When you are doing ROAS, you're doing return on ad spend. When you are doing team, you are doing return on team, okay? There are some positions and parts of your team that are easier to quantify this as, and saying a sales rep, costs 20 G's and makes you 100. Commission-based specific. There are harder ones to do, like a CS rep or someone that sits in like an operational role, but you can still do that. And the biggest thing is you can tie them to KPIs that drive the right behaviors that do drive the margin and control that. Okay. So almost everyone is going to be paid on base plus performance. And there is a difference between being aligned and being paid. Okay. There's a big difference right here. Aligned, paid, big difference. So sales. We are actually changing this up relatively soon. We just brought in a whole new system manager into here. So tier base as of now, a lot of the time, this is how they run. So they're going to be based on sales per booking as like a blended metric. They're going to be based on close rate. They're going to be based on cash collected. And an example of this and how it would look in tiers is, let's say it's 100K, 200K, and 300K in cash collected. Someone will collect if they are under the 100K, they'll get 7%. If someone is between 100 and 200, they will get 9%. And if they are over 200K to 300K or whatever the math I just said, they will get a higher percent. So what that is incentivizing is it is incentivizing them to push more volume and do more cash collected in that given range, generally a pay period, so either 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Now, the other thing you always want to protect yourself with is clawbacks. And then let's get into some return on rep because I think this is fun. So let's say you have a rep that is doing 150,000 in new cash collected. Okay. Now refunds on that are going to be, call it 10 grand. All right. So they have 150K that they collected, 10K, they just pushed them over the line. The person refunded within for a day, 2 days, whatever. And so your net new cash collected is 140 G's. We're going to assume we're going to pay them a 10% commission because they hit whatever threshold. We're going to say they have to get 150. Yeah, let's leave it at 90 bookings. And then for the booking cost, let's say that those bookings cost $350 per. You have a higher ticket offer. Okay. So $31,000, $500 in booking cost. Now your total cost is now going to be the commission that you paid them and the booking cost, right? Because you just spent $31,000 in bookings and you paid them $14,000. So your total cost is $45,000. Now your net dollars that the company then brought in is going to be $94,500, which is the net new cash. So all your new cash minus your refunds gets your net new cash minus what you just paid in costs, which is your booking cost and your commission cost. Okay. So now you have this $94,000 number. And then what you can do is get a net multiple of this, which is, you can do this multiple ways. I've seen people do it, but so you spent $45,500 to keep 94,000 at the next layer of the P&L. Okay. The other option on how to do this is to look at this instead as how much total cash did they bring in instead of what net did they bring in. So 94,000 versus this net new cash, which would give you this. Okay. So, and you can call this net growth. I mean, you can change how these are actually called, but let's just call it an ROR multiple. Now, cool thing that you can do is have this formula set built into all of your sales reps across your grid. So you can see because the big difference here is going to happen is someone's going to have really good cash collected in comparison to someone else, but they are not going to, one's going to have 3 times the amount of bookings than the other person. So someone else is more efficient with their bookings and technically is making the company has a higher return on rep multiple than someone else because the other person is taking 3 times as many calls to get the same amount of cash collected than this person. So this is kind of like a true north number. We've used it for a long time. And for a long time, we actually called it calendar rating because we didn't want to like jam numbers and like net and like how much you made the company, which is not even close to true because then it hits, if you've seen any of my other videos, that then hits the fulfillment side. It hits, I mean, this includes the ad costs in it, but it does not include fulfillment, doesn't include anything on overhead, doesn't include anything on anywhere else. And a lot of the time people misconstrue that for it's like, oh, the company just made 94 grand. It's like, no, the company did not make 94 grand. But yeah, so important piece. Now we call the calendar rating. In our new era of where we're going with sales and being more clear, I think we are going to call it ROR and return on rep. So we'll see there. But that's essentially a very, very good number, and it'll auto update real time depending on your dashboard. So maybe I'll do better videos on this, but like cash flow trackers and then like sales trackers, marketing trackers, because ours all combined and like weave in and out of each other. So they're all using the same data. But yeah, you can have this live updating across ranges, and then you can look across 14, 30, 60-day ranges, and then also adjust your availability and your ranking of your booking widgets so that the top reps based on return on rep are getting the most amount of bookings or the highest quality bookings. So instead of just cash collected, instead of just this, you can choose to optimize for whatever. Now, management to exact. So management to exact, we have done this way wrong in the past, but we now have management all directly tied to their exact KPI. So you're going to have sales manager, you're going to have a setter manager, closer manager, let's just call it. Both those are assigned to their buckets. Very important. So a closer manager gets KPI completely based on net new cash that is accepted. So like just the new portion of it. And then setter is net new cash that's from setters. Okay. So both those are aligned in that way. I can't even tell you how many times we've up comp and done it the wrong way. And then another thing I do that I can't really show, and I almost showed it, but is I model everything together. So I have a master spreadsheet in sales that is like everything you can imagine. So it goes down by cash collected here, new cash collected, net new cash collected. So call it 1, 2, 5, 10, whatever million a month. Then it has it has the manager of closer. It has the manager of setter. It has all the closers. And then it has all the setters. And then it has the different throttles all over here. So like certain managers make bases. The sales team has their thresholds for where they're at W2, and then when they cross over a draw versus a base. I have other videos talking about this. This is kind of more of a collective one, but I'm busy as shit, so I'm just yapping about this today. But the model basically will break it down and then give you a total percentage of how much the sales team, the overarching entire sales department, management, closers, setters, everything is as a blended percentage of net new rev at these numbers. And it's like pretty exact. Okay. So like I even bake in W2. So it's like, add the whatever, 20%. I just blend it and say 20%. But yeah, so that's what we're optimizing for. So this comp plan entirely is changing and incentivizing the right behaviors. So back to this, aligned culturally, paid well, and clear though on how that KPI they're driving for affects the business and affects their paycheck. Okay. So I model everything together, and that's been very, very helpful for us into this next era and phase. Marketing, we are now building new budgets, and everything is based on a percentage of new rev. So basically saying, I don't want to call it 3%, 5%. So if the company is doing $1 million in new cash, big difference, new cash a month, we are targeting $50K in basically comp that goes out to the marketing team. Now, in the beginning for us, it's going to be a little bit higher because we're basically staffing that up for where we're currently at into this next era, and then it will not move in the same way. We're just trying to keep it under this range so that we can model things into the future. So almost everybody is paid as a base plus a KPI. Things that for KPIs that we have used and are using right now are things like CAC plus volume. Almost everything is a pairing metric for this. So call it CAC under 1,000, but you also must have, call it 500 units of whatever you're talking about. So you would say you'd pair those together because it's very easy to get a CAC of under 1,000 if you do 12 units in a month. It is not as easy to keep the CAC under that range and have tiers on those ranges. and keep the volume of those. So these are the initial ones we put in, and we put all these in with clauses that have like you can make amendments to them and change them, because there are large things that could change within the business. Like, for example, everything could stay the same, but close rate could double, and the marketing department would get half the CAC. If your close rate goes from 20% to 40%, which is crazy, but like, let's just say, if it was to do that, your CAC would go in half, because they're still paying the same amount for everything all the way down to the booking. Now those bookings are just converting at twice the rate. So like, these need to always be adjusted, and they need to be monitored. And like, as soon as it just cracks through that, the entire marketing team, yes, they should be comped in a reasonable way, but to just like blanket now have them at this new floor because sales hit a new KPI and raise their floor is like not okay. So there's adjustments that need to be made. And then outputs with expected results. So almost everyone in here, it's kind of just like a version of this. Almost everyone is tied to one of these, how do I say this, into a KPI. And when you can't, it is like second and third order consequence view. So basically an example of that is like, we aren't KPIing out an editor based on necessarily how it performs. We actually have done that, but in the current state. So we have an editor, for example, that'll do organic and paid. And right now we pay for outputs. So we just pay for, 22 of these X amount of time every whatever. Now that is paid more or less at like a base amount. And we do increase them as, load goes up, as they perform, as stuff we have in the past, almost like too much. But we know that those output of those amount then go into this, then go into this, then hit the ad account, then generally, 2 win plus this, and then it equals that. So focusing on what the output is in order to reach the point in which it can be KPI'd, where it can perform, and then basically having like bonuses come back and kick back is like a big focus of ours, and where we're going to start leaning in organic and paid. Fulfillment side of things. This one we just did a revamp. This team is like amazing. And another core thing here is like, we have overpaid. I think I go into this here, but like, we have overpaid everybody. And like, or maybe overpaid is the wrong word. We have paid everyone very, very well. Very well. So like some of the biggest numbers on last year when we scaled up and like did not make as much margin, it was ads, obviously. So like I said, acquisition was exploding, but also how, I don't want to say overpaid, but like how well everyone was paid on the team was good. They have done very well for themselves working with us. And it's kind of hard to like backpedal on some of that stuff, but like there are scalable numbers and there are non-scalable numbers, and some of those are not, right? So we have an insanely good coaching team, and in this business. And so how we're now basing this is based on client load. We're making it easier on admin, and then doing things like tenure, competitions, NPS, like actual performance of the role. We have tried to tie in things like retention, and it just gets so messy because there are people who are going to renew on their own. There are people who are going to renew through another rep. There are people who just only want the year and are not going to renew. And it just like becomes a mess, and then also changes the frame from like coaching to like selling, which is not the vibe either and not what we're looking for. So yeah, so we're building this out, and then also having additional options of ways to make comp, like doing things like the group coaching programs that we're talking about, doing things like community that we're talking about, and then baking these in a clean way that someone who is tenured gets paid more and continues to, as they are, celebrate a 2-year, a 5-year, whatever those numbers are. And all this math is still being worked out on the exacts, but these are the focus of them. Competitions, we do things internal like review competitions. We do things like testimonial submissions. We do things like challenges. Like we do all these different things in there. And then we have a constant inflow of NPS stuff where those are then triggered in there as well. So on marketing, if you're saying it's 5% of new cash, you have that as a pretty easy number of knowing what that is. Okay. So you can easily align for that. On fulfillment, the general goal you're going to be targeting, Hormozi uses a number. He says 20 in service. I've heard 15. I've heard 50. So it can kind of be whatever. Just do your own math. But knowing what the percentage you are willing to pay, and then being able to back into the efficiency of said system so that the person fulfilling the service that's on your team is paid at market or above, ideally above, for the amount of work they are doing. Okay. And that as a percentage is in alignment with what you are charging. Okay. So simple example, $10,000 is cash collected. Let's say you're using a Hormozi number, and I'm going to hate myself if I'm wrong on this, but let's just say it's 20 or 15. Let's call it 15. you collected $10,000, you have all your other expenses you have, and then you have $1,500, 15%, so $1,500 that goes to the person fulfilling it. So I've heard people have this for when they do agencies. I've heard people do this with coaching. I've heard people do it with info that are like one-to-one call sessions, all this stuff. So if you have $1,500 that is across the year, around whatever, $110, whatever the math is quickly, a month that you can then pay that person. Now, how many client load do they need to get it to where they're making 70 grand a year or 120 or 300 grand a year, whatever the math is. And you need to be able to run these numbers and know these so you can basically pay someone competitively, but also make it work for your math. So you want a happy person and you want good costs. And that is like a constant dance and like rock and hard place. But when you tier these all together and they all kind of mesh, everyone's making good money. Company is keeping good money and everyone's happy. And like the efficiencies you can get here, and I'm not going to go into this, but like AI and tech and all that you can do here, systems around this, frameworks. And then in this, the way that you can do this in comp, like there are plenty of ways to pay people really, really well that are directly tied to, I think it was Eddie Malouf talks about this in one of his videos. He's like, all my bonuses are literally only like, or my performance pay is literally only when we are making more money. So it's like if we now made 100,000 more in a performance thing, like they get a direct portion of that 100,000. If we don't make more and the client doesn't pay us more, we don't pay the team more, like roughly speaking. So yeah, it's a really good way to do it. It gets much harder when you start talking about fulfillment, CS, for customer success, client success, whatever you want to call it. Those we have things like bonus pools that are based around refund pools. So the lower the refund rate, they hit different like thresholds of bonus pools. So they are in the main control of, we call escalations and winbacks, or not winbacks, escalations, refunds, and like winbacks, I think it actually is. So it's basically how many of them got into here and wanted to refund or had like, a billing concern that was deep enough to be qualified, and then how many of them were saved. And that is a pretty nice bonus pool that sits there that they get paid out on. So they're driving towards the KPI of keeping that number down. And what we've done wrong, fucking everything. Overpaid, underperformed. We have done things with sales comp. We have done things with coaching comp. We have done things with marketing bases and ops overall bases. We've had project managers that make 100 grand a year that we don't let project manage. Like it's been so bad before. And now I think we know what we didn't know then, and there's going to be 92 things that we don't know still that are going to come into the next one. But in the past, we have overpaid for underperforming people. We have not leveraged the team correctly. Even today, we had a conversation that was like, we have XYZ grouping of people, and like we're not leveraging their use. And it's not even like putting in more time necessarily. It's just like effectively how to use their strengths in order to do so. We have tied people to either no KPI, basically just, they're making 5 grand, 10 grand a month, and they didn't have a clear KPI. And even if they did have a KPI, it wasn't tied to their comp. And we still have people like that today. So we are working on adjusting that, or being tied to the wrong KPI. We have had people connected to all net rev when they could only control new. We have had people who are tied to back-end recurring, example of coach, where yes, they have some level of it, but then it gets passed off. For example, if we run an internal promotion and we sell them all through marketing and through the company, then they're getting paid for it, even though they were not directly the one who did it. You could argue they are the one who got them to enjoy their experience, but they were paid to get them to enjoy their experience on the actual piece. So our coaches are fantastic. It was just like, it was on us for putting in wrong KPIs that they couldn't control and that are messy. That's another big one, is messy KPIs are not good. Hard to calculate, not good. Hard to understand comp plans, not good. Tiers and bonuses and triggers on this and whatever that are not auto-calculated and someone can't do in their head, not good. For simple stuff like this. W-2 early jump, definitely go W-2 if you're going to this scale and you want to sell and you want to be legal and you want to do all this stuff, but do not do it unless you want complexity. And we did it early, and we probably shouldn't have when we did do it. We're happy that we did now, and it's like everything's compliant and to a T, but it's a big jump. So that was something we messed up in terms of comp and ROI, because you easily add 20% on top of what you're going to pay. So if you're paying 100 grand, now it's 120. Effort, not output, kind of similar to this, the no KPI. We've just paid for time, more or less, that was not tied to an output and have been burned. Scoreboards, we've had them incorrect and we've had them non-public at all. So people who are getting paid on a KPI that they don't know what it is until you get paid. Dumb. And then we have just overall increased the floor of things a lot of the time. So W-2 is a good example, but kind of bad example. W-2, you're going to have 20 reps that are now all going to be making XYZ base, or you're going to have them on hourly that now needs to be tracked. And when you increase the floor like that, you instantly eat it's just overhead. So you add 200 grand a month or whatever the number is, and know that you now need to do 3 times that. You need to do an extra 600 grand in cash in order to pay for the new increase you just put in, just arbitrarily. So that's a fun nugget. But if your team wins and your margin dies, you didn't build comp, you built a chaos machine. So I hope this was helpful. I am on day like 62 in a row of doing these, and my brain is like, I'm just bouncing. This is all I do all day, is just this kind of stuff. And so I'm trying to keep this on pace for like where I'm at and where we're at in the journey of things. We were talking about all these. We did revamps on Monday. Today is Tuesday. We were rebuilding this morning. So I just figured this would be real time good. And I hopefully this one was relatively helpful for you. Daily update. We are humming along. We did 100 and something yesterday. We were doing okay. And then, but it's still with the consistency. So it's going to take a month, 2 months to fully reflesh that out. And in the meantime, we are changing things on marketing. I think I'm going to do that tomorrow, talking about our marketing setup and some of the changes we're making. We did a ton of split tests, things won, things lost. Actually, everything lost. I think one thing won. Or one thing is actively winning, but has not been crowned as the winner. So low ticket, we're making some big adjustments there on what we're doing with that entire setup, because ours has more or less acted as like a retargeting function and can't really scale into cold as well. So we're making some adjustments around that, but the system and the flow works well. And so everything is in the right direction, but that's the daily update. www.ryanclog.com. Must use the www.doc, and you'll have all the videos I've made every single day for the last 62 days. 61, I don't even know. 61? Today's 62. So tech, marketing, ops, sales, all the things. Hit me on IG, comment below these, hit me on X, any of the things. Happy to help. Thanks for being along on the journey.